The galaxy was wide and full of stars, and every corner of space had its own secrets and its own dangers. Yet there were some things that even the oldest races whispered about in fear, and one of those things was the story of the human ghost ship that vanished long ago. It had been almost 200 years since the war between humanity and the coalition of alien powers ended, and in that war humanity fought with fire and steel and refused to kneel even when every other race thought they would fall. And when the war was over, the humans were gone, and the galaxy thought they were finished forever. But there were stories of a great ship the size of a moving city, the pride of the human fleet, the ship that was said to carry weapons no alien mind could understand and no alien shield could block. It was called the Valiant Star, and it disappeared at the end of the last battle, vanishing into the void without a trace. Some said the humans destroyed it themselves, so their secrets would not fall into alien hands. Some said the ship slipped into another dimension, and some whispered that the humans were not dead at all, that they were waiting and watching and would return one day with vengeance in their eyes. For 2 centuries, the galaxy laughed at these stories, but never too loudly, because deep inside they feared that one day the ghost ship would reappear and the memory of human strength would rise again. Now the year was 9541 by galactic time, and in the far edges of known space, an old mining freighter drifted near a dead star, its crew small and tired, and only wanting to finish their work. Yet their scanners began to scream as something impossible appeared on their screen, a massive object emerging from the shadows. At first they thought it was a trick of broken signals or a cluster of debris caught in orbit, but the shape grew clearer, long, straight lines, glowing edges, a hull that carried scars of old battles, and a dark silhouette that made every heart freeze. It was the Valiant Star, and it was awake once more. The captain of the freighter, an old lizard-like being named Herrick, stared at the screen with cold eyes. He had lived long enough to hear the stories. When he was young, his elders told him never to speak the name of the human ghost ship, and now here it was standing in front of him. The freighter crew panicked. Some begged to run, some wanted to send messages, but Herrick ordered silence. He knew what it meant. If this was true, if this ship was alive, then the galaxy would tremble again. The Valiant Star drifted slowly, silent, yet powerful, its engines not burning, yet its lights alive, its massive guns resting, but ready, its dark steel body filled with mystery. There was no signal, no greeting, no threat, yet its very presence spoke louder than words. The freighter was too small to matter, yet one wrong move could mean doom. Herrick whispered for his crew to keep quiet, as if the ghost ship could hear them through the void, and for a long moment time itself felt frozen. The galaxy was about to change. Finally, Herrick gave the order to leave, slowly, without drawing attention, but before they could move, the Valiant Star shifted. One of its lights turned bright, scanning the freighter like a predator looking at prey. The crew held their breath, their hearts racing, but the ship did not fire, did not chase, it only watched. Then the light dimmed, and the Valiant Star turned away, drifting toward the dead star, as if returning to sleep. Herrick knew this was not the end, this was only the beginning. He opened his communicator and sent a coded signal, a secret call, used only for things beyond reason. He knew the Coalition High Council must hear this, even if it meant panic across the stars. The ghost ship of humanity had returned. The message reached faster than light, carried through ancient channels, and when the High Council heard it, silence filled their chambers. These were beings who ruled countless systems, yet fear showed on every face. They remembered the war, they remembered the way humans fought, and they remembered how the humans vanished, not broken, but undefeated. The oldest of them, a tall and frail being with skin like crystal, spoke with a trembling voice. If the humans have returned, if the Valiant Star is awake, then everything we built will fall. The others tried to argue, saying maybe it was only wreckage, maybe it was only illusion, but deep inside they knew the truth. Meanwhile, the Valiant Star drifted closer to the dead star, yet its systems were alive deep inside. Its hull's long, empty corridors began to glow, faint lights flickering on like the breath of a giant returning from sleep. Machines hummed, and weapons whispered of power, waiting to be unleashed. The ship was not dead, it was waking. In the command chamber, the captain's chair was still empty, yet screens lit up, maps of stars glowing across the room, and a strange sound echoed, a low human voice, calm and steady, repeating the same words again and again. Repairs requested, upgrades received. The ship was alive, but not As the galaxy knew it, no human crew walked its decks, but something remained: an intelligence, forged from human design, a mind that carried the will of its makers, and that mind had waited for centuries. And now it was awake. Far away, on the freighter, Herrick sat in silence, his claws tapping against the console. His crew begged him to forget what they saw, but he could not forget the way the ship looked at them, the way it felt alive. He knew the galaxy would soon remember what humanity truly was. Outside, the void stretched cold and endless, yet in that silence the return of one ship had already broken the balance of the stars. The valiant star was not a ghost, it was a warning, and soon the galaxy would understand. The council gathered in secret chambers, debating what to do. Some wanted to attack at once, to send fleets to destroy the ship before it could awaken further. Others warned that to strike would be to invite a storm they could not survive, because if one human ship returned, maybe more would follow, and then no power in the galaxy could stand against them. As they argued, as fear grew like fire, the valiant star opened a single channel, broadcasting into the void, its message simple and clear in the human tongue that many no longer understood. Its meaning carried weight across all minds. Repairs requested, upgrades received the human way. Every listener, every watcher felt their blood run cold, because those words were not only about the ship, they were about humanity itself. And so the galaxy stood on the edge of fear, wondering if the age of humans had truly ended long ago, or if it was about to begin again. The ghost ship had reappeared, and the galaxy remembered their power. The ghost ship moved slowly through the silent darkness of space, and the galaxy seemed to watch it with fear and curiosity. No one could explain why the ship had returned after so many years, and no one could understand how it had survived so long without any clear crew or command. And yet here it was, drifting with strange energy, glowing softly across its old human steel body, while the other ships and stations near its path kept their distance. Every race in the galaxy had once thought humans were gone. Humans had vanished long ago after wars and struggles that broke the stars apart, their colonies silent, their fleets missing, their voices gone, and their power only remembered in fading stories. Now, with this ghost ship sliding back into sight, those old stories suddenly felt alive again. The ship was not broken, even though it had been lost for centuries. Its hull looked scarred, but alive. Lines of strange lights pulsed across its surface, as if the steel itself was breathing, and the old human symbols still carved on the side glowed faintly, as if they were never truly forgotten. It was a sight both beautiful and terrifying. Across the galaxy, leaders whispered in secret halls. They asked each other if this was a warning, if the humans were not gone, but waiting. If the return of this one ship meant more would follow. The council worlds debated in panic. Should they greet it or destroy it? Should they hide or prepare for war? No answer came, because no one knew what power remained inside that silent ship. On the edge of a system near a blue star, the ship slowed. As if listening, it turned slightly, drifting toward an abandoned outpost once built by humans long before their disappearance. The outpost was dead, with no lights and no life, only broken towers and empty hangars. But as the ghost ship drew near, those towers lit again, as if waking from endless sleep. The dead outpost suddenly alive with ancient human power. Aliens from far sectors watched from hidden positions, their sensors shaking from the strange energy that rippled out. It was not simple power. It was not like their own machines. This energy felt deeper, like it came from something beyond understanding, and some whispered that it was the reason humans had once frightened every empire in the stars. Inside the ghost ship, the truth remained hidden. No one could see a crew, no one could detect minds or life, but there was movement inside, shapes walking through corridor, shadows that looked human, yet moved like echoes, perhaps real, perhaps not. The galaxy could not decide what was living and what was only memory. A small fleet of alien ships approached carefully. Their commanders wanted to capture the ghost ship, to unlock its secrets. They spoke with courage, but their voices carried fear. They sent hails, but no answer came. The ghost ship floated in silence, only its glowing hull speaking louder than any word. The alien fleet moved closer, their weapons ready, their scanners burning through the hull, trying to see inside. But each signal failed, as if the ship rejected their eyes. Every time they tried, their systems flickered with errors, their engines groaned, their weapons faltered. It was as if the ship itself was defending against their gaze without even firing back. Still they pressed forward, desperate for what secrets might rest inside. Then something shifted. A low sound pulsed out from the ship, not like words, but like a heartbeat, heavy and endless, each beat shaking the fleet's sensors and pushing fear into every heart. Those who had studied human history remembered something similar. Old records spoke of human warships that carried not only weapons, but living cores, machines bound to the will of their makers. The fleet panicked, but their leaders demanded they continue. So they prepared to board the ghost ship's small craft, launched crossing the space between the alien fleet and the human relic. They clamped onto the hull, trying to cut their way inside. But the steel was harder than anything they had faced. Their lasers only left shallow scars. Their drills snapped, and their engines overheated. And then the ship opened on its own with no warning. A massive door slid apart, as if the ship was choosing who could enter. The boarding craft were sucked inside, unable to escape. The aliens inside screamed in fear as their sensors died and their lights flickered, then silence. The galaxy held its breath. No one knew what had happened. Those who had gone inside never sent word, and the ghost ship closed itself again, drifting away from the fleet as if nothing had touched it. The alien commanders were shaken. They thought of retreat, but they also thought of power. If they could take the ship, they could rule the stars themselves. They gathered more forces from nearby systems, calling reinforcements, but every ship that came felt the same dread when they drew close, as if the ship was watching them. Meanwhile, across distant stars, other races heard of the ghost ship's return, and old fear rose again. Some remembered human wars where entire fleets vanished in minutes. Some remembered human weapons that bent space and crushed worlds. They had thought those stories were only myth, but now the myth stood real before them, glowing and silent. And so the galaxy began to shift once more. Lines of power moving, old alliances breaking. Some wanted to destroy the ghost ship before it awakened. Others wanted to claim it for themselves. And a few whispered that perhaps the humans inside were alive and waiting to rise again. The ship itself moved slowly past the blue star, leaving the broken outpost glowing like a beacon, as if it had reawakened something long forgotten. The energy trail followed in its wake, and sensors across half the galaxy recorded it, but no one dared block its path, because the silence of the ship felt heavier than any weapon. At the same time, whispers spread through the hidden networks of spies and wanderers. Some said they had seen a figure through the faint windows of the ship, a human shape, standing tall at the command deck, watching with eyes that burned like fire. Others said it was only shadow, but the fear spread faster than light, because if even one human still lived inside, the galaxy would never be the same again. The ghost ship drifted toward darker space, its glowing lights fading, but not dying behind it. The galaxy was alive with fear and greed, each empire debating its next move. Some chose to hunt, some chose to run, some chose to wait, but no one could escape the truth. The humans were not gone, and their power was waking again. And so, as the ship vanished into the void, the galaxy held its breath, once more waiting for the next move, waiting for the moment when silence would break, waiting for the return of the power they had once feared more than anything. And as the ghost ship disappeared, the stars themselves seemed to whisper one truth: humanity was never truly gone, and soon the galaxy would remember. The ghost ship hung in the silence of space like a shadow of the past, glowing faintly with strange lights that pulsed across its surface, and every alien eye that looked upon it felt a chill crawl down their spine, because this was no ordinary vessel. It was the legendary human warship, the one thought destroyed 100 years ago, and its return was stirring fear and curiosity in equal measure. The Andari fleet had been the first to detect its signal. They were a species known for calm wisdom and patience, yet even their captain, a being with skin like glass and eyes like burning stars, whispered to his crew with trembling voice, saying that this cannot be real, that the humans were gone forever and their ships should have turned to dust. But now here, it was a massive giant drifting back into the galaxy like a ghost refusing to die. Inside the command chamber of the Andari flagship, officers argued in hushed tones. Some demanded the fleet fire upon the ship before it awakened. Others said it must be studied because such technology could never be wasted. But all of them agreed on one thing: the humans had always been different. They had always been unpredictable, and that unpredictability was the very thing that had once made the galaxy fear them. As the ghost ship floated closer, its hull revealed markings burned into metal symbols of past battle scars of weapons that no other species had survived, and the silence of its engines made it even more haunting, for it seemed alive and dead at the same time, like something that should not exist, yet did exist, and that alone made every being nervous. The Galactic Council received the message within hours, and the great chamber of voices filled with chaos species shouted over each other, demanding answers, asking how the humans had returned, or if this was a trap. One elder who had lived long enough to remember the great human wars raised his trembling claws and spoke in a voice that silenced the chamber. He said that if this ship had truly returned, then the balance of power in the galaxy would shatter once more, because humans never built simple vessels. They built weapons of survival and vessels of defiance. Far away on a lonely outpost, two miners from a reptilian race watched the strange broadcast on their screen. They laughed nervously, saying it was only old metal floating in space. But deep inside, they felt unease, for stories of humans had always been told in whispers, parents scaring their children with tales of relentless warriors who never stopped fighting even when beaten to the ground. And now those bedtime tales were turning into reality before their very eyes. Back aboard the ghost ship, lights flickered in patterns like breathing corridors. Once dark came alive with power systems one by one awakened, as though something was inside guiding it to return life. Support hummed, weapons systems glowed, shields flickered into existence, and in the deepest part of the ship, a single chamber sealed for a century slowly opened. Inside were pods long forgotten, filled with shadows, and one by one their glass covers lit up, revealing human figures suspended in cryosleep, pale faces frozen in time, their hearts waiting to beat once again. And as the system rebooted, a voice deep and metallic echoed through the halls. It said, "Repairs requested, upgrades received, initiating awakening sequence." And with those words, the legend of humanity began to breathe once more. The Andari captain, watching from his vessel, felt his heart race. He ordered scanners to sweep the ship, but the readings made no sense. The technology was beyond anything they had ever seen. It seemed alive, as if the ship had grown stronger during its absence. One officer whispered that maybe the humans had never left, maybe they had hidden, waiting for the day they would rise again, and perhaps that day was now. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, old enemies of humans trembled in silence. The Veer Dominion, whose ancestors had once fought bloody wars against Earth, gathered in their war rooms. The Chancellor of the Veer looked at the ghost ship's image with cold fear, for he remembered the stories passed down of how humans had turned hopeless battles into victories through sheer will. He slammed his clawed hand on the table and growled that the galaxy must unite to crush this threat before it awakens. But not all shared his fear. Some species whispered of opportunity. If humanity had returned, then so too had their knowledge, their inventions, their unmatched spirit, and those who could ally with them might rise above the rest. And so secret messages began to spread across the stars, some calling for fear, others calling for hope, and all of it centered on the ship, drifting silently through the void. As the first human pod cracked open, frost spilled across the floor. The body within shivered and gasped for air. His eyes snapped open, glowing with determination. Even after 100 years of sleep, his voice was hoarse yet strong as he whispered, "Where are we, and why is the ship awake?" The system responded with its metallic echo, saying, "Humanity is needed, humanity must rise." And with those words, the man stepped out, trembling but alive. The ship shook as if sensing his presence. The lights burned brighter, the engines rumbled faintly, as if ready to roar once more, and across the galaxy alarms rang. Every listening post, every station, every satellite began to detect the rising power of the ghost ship. It was no longer a husk, it was alive, and with it humanity was alive again. The Andari captain felt dread, but also he knew history was being written before his eyes, and he whispered to himself that the galaxy would never be the same again. His crew begged him to retreat, but he remained frozen, staring at the screen, unable to turn away, because he knew something unstoppable had just awakened. And in the final moment of that day, as the ghost ship's engines finally came to life, burning with light brighter than a star, every species watching realized that the galaxy had only two choices: to kneel in fear or to rise and face humanity once more. The ghost ship roared forward, breaking its silence, and the galaxy trembled as the legend of human power began to write a new chapter that none would forget. The ghost ship floated across the silent path of stars, and yet the silence was not calm. It was heavy and alive with strange power, and every sensor in the nearby fleets tried to read it, but they only found fragments of signals, fragments of voices, fragments of something that did not belong to normal space. And still it was there, shining with human design and covered with scars from battles long forgotten. The Kalari fleet had followed the signal for days, and their commander was restless, for he knew the council demanded answers, and he feared that answers would cost blood. His crew spoke in whispers every time they looked at the ghost ship, and one of the younger officers asked if the ship was even real, or if it was only a shadow of the past hanging in the void, and no one could give him comfort. Inside the ghost ship, the air was stale, but the systems were alive with hums and lights that flickered across the steel walls as if the ship itself dreamed, and the corridors stretched long and twisted, filled with dust, yet also with something more, something unseen, something that made every step sound louder than it should. And when the Kalari boarding team first entered, they felt a weight in their chests like unseen eyes watching. They moved deeper, and the sensors recorded strange energy fields shaped like pulses, shaped like echoes of voices, and one of the officers swore he heard footsteps behind him, though the corridor was empty, and another said he saw a figure standing in the shadows, but when they pointed a light, there was nothing at all. At the same time, in a hidden corner of the galaxy, an old survivor of the first human wars woke from his slumber. He was not human. He was Vala, a species that had fought humans centuries ago and lost. And he had lived long enough to remember their ships, their strategies, their cruelty, and their brilliance. When he heard the signal of the ghost ship, he felt his bones shake, for he knew the galaxy would never remain the same again. Back aboard the Kalari flagship, the commander spoke to the council through trembling voice. He said the ship was no wreck, it was alive in ways they could not explain. Its systems resisted scans, its walls seemed to move, its signals changed every hour, as if it was breathing. And when he tried to order his crew to pull back, some of them refused, claiming they could hear voices calling their names. The council debated fiercely. Some said, destroy it before it woke and spread chaos again. Others said, capture it and study it to unlock human secrets of power and war. And still others whispered that touching it would bring doom upon all, just as it did in the old wars when humanity rose like fire and burned across the stars, leaving ashes. But the ghost ship did not wait for debate. Its lights grew brighter each passing cycle, and its engines began to hum, though no one had activated them. And the Kalari fleet drifted nervously closer, as if pulled by invisible chains. The commander shouted to increase distance, but the ships could not move. Their systems were frozen, their controls dead, and every crew member felt a vibration through their bones. Then came a sound across every channel, a human voice, strong, clear, ancient, saying one single phrase: repairs requested, upgrades received, and the message repeated over and over. The Kalari froze, for none of them spoke the old human tongue, but still they understood the words in their minds, as if the ship itself pushed the meaning directly into their thoughts. Fear spread through the fleet. Some cried, some tried to shut their calms, but the voice never stopped, and one of the ships near the ghost vessel began to break apart with no explosion, no warning. It simply dissolved into fragments of light, drifting away like dust, while the ghost ship grew stronger, glowing with streams of energy that ran across its hull like veins filled with fire. The Vala survivor, watching from afar, trembled and spoke to his people. He said, "This is no accident. This is no echo. The humans are calling back their creation. They are waking their weapon, and the galaxy will remember what it means to face them again." Meanwhile, deep within the ghost ship, hidden chambers opened where strange machines stood silent, waiting. Machines that had not moved for centuries now clicked and turned as if new orders had been given. And in one chamber a chair rotated, and it was empty, yet the shadows around it looked shaped like a person waiting to sit again. The Kalari commander made one last attempt to retreat, but his ship was not his own anymore. The controls glowed with alien light, not of his people, not of any known species, but of human design, merged with something else, something greater, and his crew screamed that their own ship was changing, walls shifting into strange shapes, doors closing without command, lights burning into their eyes. And then the ghost ship spoke again, this time louder, this time filled with emotion. It said, "Upgrades complete, awaiting command." And though no human was there to speak, the entire fleet felt the presence of something ancient and powerful standing before them, unseen, but real as the stars themselves. The Kalari knew in that moment they were no longer hunters of an old wreck. They were prisoners of a force beyond their understanding, and somewhere in the silence of deep space, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen when the ghost ship chose its first move. The part ended with the ghost ship releasing one final signal across every channel, a signal not of war, not of peace, but of awakening, and those who heard it felt their blood run cold, for they realized the ghost ship was not only a machine, it was the voice of humanity returning after centuries of silence, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy was quiet after the strange pulse had faded, but the silence did not bring peace. Instead, it brought fear and worry, because now every species wondered what would come next. The ghost ship had spoken through its strange hum and its strange light, and now the echo of that sound was stuck in the minds of every living being. In the Council of Orion, the leaders of many worlds gathered. They spoke in low voices, but their faces showed fear. They asked each other, what if humanity had returned? What if the ship was a warning? Or what if it was a signal for war? None of them could answer these questions, but the thought alone made the air heavy. Far away, the ghost ship drifted, still glowing with lines of pale light across its massive hull. And inside the halls that were once empty began to stir. Machines hummed back to life. Corridors that were once cold became warm, and systems that had been silent for centuries began to glow, as if the ship itself was waking from a long dream. In one chamber deep inside the ship, a light formed in the air. It grew brighter and brighter until it became a figure. The figure was not flesh. It was made of light and energy, but it looked like a human. It was tall, with sharp eyes and calm strength. Its voice carried no sound, yet it reached every corner of the chamber, as if the ship itself spoke. The figure looked around, as if remembering, and then it began to walk through the corridors. Every door opened at its presence. Every light shined brighter as it passed. The ship seemed to know it and respect it, as if it was the captain returned to guide the vessel once more. Outside, a small scout ship belonging to the Zorith watched from afar. Its crew stared with wide eyes. They saw the glowing figure through their scanners, and fear froze them, for the stories of human captains were not forgotten. The Zorith remembered battles long ago, when human fleets had turned wars upside down with only a handful of ships. One of the crew whispered, what if this is not just a ship? What if it is a message from their dead leaders? Another said, maybe it is more than a message. Maybe it is a test. If we come closer, maybe we are judged. The ghost ship then released a sudden beam of light into the empty space. The beam split into patterns, floating symbols glowing in the dark. Every race who saw it began to record it, but none could understand it. Yet those symbols were old. They were human codes from before the silence. Back in the Orion Council, a scientist stood and shouted, I know these symbols. They are ancient, but they are human orders. The leaders leaned forward, desperate for meaning. The scientist explained, they say awaken, prepare, return. Fear swept the room. No one wanted to believe it, but the words were clear. Humanity had left behind instructions, and the ghost ship was following them. Meanwhile, on the ghost ship, the figure of light moved into the command bridge, and there it stood before the giant control screen. The ship obeyed. As systems lit up one after another outside, the engines began to hum, and the whole vessel shivered, as if stretching after a long rest. It had been drifting for centuries, but now it prepared to move. The galaxy watched as the ship turned its bow toward the stars beyond. No one knew what direction it chose, but its engines burned bright and steady once again. Races across the galaxy sent warnings and messages. Some begged for peace, others prepared for war, but none could ignore the return of the ghost ship. In a hidden base on a forgotten moon, a small group of humans watched the news. They were descendants of those who had vanished. They had been waiting for this moment. One of them smiled and whispered, the ship has awakened, the time has come. They wore old uniforms patched with care, and they had old weapons hidden in crates. Though weak in number, their eyes burned with pride, for they had not forgotten the past. They had been waiting for the return of the ship, because they believed it carried the soul of their ancestors. As the ghost ship drifted closer to the edge of known space, the figure of light looked outward, its eyes glowing with cold fire. It raised its hand, and the ship responded, releasing another wave of energy across the stars. It reached planets and stations. It touched the minds of leaders and soldiers, and every single one felt the same chill. The humans were speaking again. But the message was not words, it was a feeling, it was a memory of battles of courage of humans standing strong against impossible odds. It was a reminder that they had not been broken, even if they were gone, and those who felt it shivered because they understood the message was clear: humanity was not dead, they were waiting. Panic grew, some species began arming fleets, others tried to reach the ship, but none succeeded because the vessel moved faster than their scanners could follow, and when they thought they had cornered it, they only found empty space. The ghost ship moved like a shadow, always one step ahead, always watching. Back in the Orion Council, leaders began to argue louder. Some said, "Destroy it now, before it is too late." Others said, "Leave it alone, or we will bring doom upon us all." And in the middle of this storm, the scientist whispered, "Maybe it is not here to fight. Maybe it is here to remind us of something." The ghost ship then did something no one expected. It sent smaller drones out into space, each one glowing and moving silently. They spread out across many systems, landing on moons, planets, and empty fields. They planted strange towers of light. Each tower pulsed with the same hum as the ship and began to dig into the ground. The galaxy gasped. What were these towers? What were they building? No one knew, and that mystery only deepened the fear. On a faraway mining world, a tower rose, and its glow reached deep into the planet. The miners fled screaming as the ground shook. But the tower did not harm, only spread roots of light into the soil, making the land shine. With a new energy, one miner whispered, "Maybe they are not here to kill. Maybe they are here to change." But the fear would not rest, because across the stars fleets moved closer to the ghost ship, hoping to capture it or destroy it. Yet every time they came near, the ship vanished like smoke, leaving them chasing shadows. In the hidden base, the humans gathered around their leader, who spoke in a firm voice. "The galaxy is afraid, but we know the truth. The ship is not a weapon, it is a key, and we must follow it, for it will show the path of our return." The leader raised his hand toward the stars, and the others nodded, their eyes shining with belief. Outside, the ghost ship pulsed brighter than before. Its engines roared, and its figure of light captain raised both arms, as if calling the galaxy to witness. The real awakening was about to begin, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble, waiting for what humanity would bring back. The ghost ship moved slowly through the star lanes, carrying the silence of forgotten ages, while fleets from many alien nations watched with fear and with wonder, for they could not understand how the human vessel still lived, how its engines still burned, and how its weapons still pulsed with energy after so many lost years. And every eye from every corner of the galaxy waited for the next sign from this strange return. In the High Council chamber of the Vala Dominion, the leaders argued with sharp voices, for some wanted to strike the ghost ship down before it could awaken any hidden danger, while others warned that such an attack could bring doom to them all. And in the center of the chamber, the Grand Seer spoke in whispers, saying that the return of this ship was a sign of balance breaking, and that the galaxy would be tested soon in ways no race had prepared for. On the ghost ship itself, lights flickered in long corridors once silent, while systems long asleep began to hum with quiet strength. And as this happened, the watchers from far away saw flashes of code moving through the vessel, signals written in human script, strange lines of numbers and letters that no one alive outside of old human knowledge could read. Yet the meaning was clear to them. It was awakening. The Skarn Collective sent scouts closer to the drifting vessel, their ships sharp like blades cutting through the void, and as they approached, they felt waves of static pressure pulling at their sensors, and one by one the scouts pulled back, leaving only fractured recordings of human voices whispering about upgrades, repairs, and promises that no alien mind could follow fully. Across the galaxy, old rumors rose again, stories told in hushed tones about humanity's endless drive to grow, to fight, to survive, stories of how they turned every loss into strength and every wound into armor. And those who once mocked them now feared the idea that the ghost ship might not be empty, but waiting with intent. Inside the great halls of the Zorith Dominion, soldiers, trained with twice the fury for their commanders, feared that if humans had truly returned, even in the form of one haunted vessel, then no defense would stand unless sharpened by blood and fire. And whispers spread among the younger troops, who asked their elders what humans had been like, and all answers carried a tone of both dread and respect. Meanwhile, on the ghost ship, deeper systems activated, as if some hidden timer had been counting all along, and great doors that had not opened for centuries slid apart, releasing chambers filled with glowing shapes, and within those chambers machines began to move. Some looked like drones, some like guardians, and their eyes lit with pale light while they turned toward the stars beyond. The Watchers panicked at this sight, for they thought perhaps the ship would unleash an army. But no attack came. Instead, the drones spread through the vessel, checking each hull, scanning each wall, repairing broken parts, as if they were caretakers preparing for the return of their masters. And this confused the galaxy even more, for it seemed the ship had purpose, but no one knew what. Then came the voice, the same signal that had first been heard now grew stronger, reaching across systems with clarity, and the words, though still human in origin, carried new power. "We are awake, we are ready, we are repaired," and all who heard it trembled, for the sound carried not threat, but certainty, the certainty of a people who had once changed the galaxy by their will alone. Among the council's fear grew heavy. Some argued to hide from the ship and never speak of it again. Others demanded to unite every fleet and destroy it before it grew stronger. But a smaller voice whispered that perhaps the humans had not come to conquer, but to remind the galaxy of something older and deeper, and that to strike at them again might awaken wrath beyond control. In the far reaches of forgotten space, a beacon answered the call. It was not alien. It was human, built, old and rusted, yet still alive, and when the signal from the ghost ship touched it, the beacon shone bright and released a wave of energy that traveled faster than thought, carrying across sectors, and with each place it touched, more beacons lit one by one, until hundreds across the galaxy burned like stars once lost. The meaning could not be denied. Humans had left seeds across the void, markers, hidden beacons waiting for a return, and now those markers awakened in unison, as if called home by the ghost ship, and the galaxy trembled for the map they drew was clear, a network of places that no alien had ever dared to claim. Back on the ghost ship, a new chamber lit, and inside was a great seat carved with symbols of Earth, symbols that many had forgotten, yet some still remembered, and though the seat was empty, the drones gathered around it, as if waiting for someone to arrive and fill the place of command, and this image spread across alien screens, filling them with fear and wonder. For if the humans were gone, how could the ship call itself ready, and who would sit upon that chair and lead it once more? And as this question burned through every council and every fleet, the ghost ship turned its course, no longer drifting. It now moved with intent, heading toward one of the bright new beacons that had answered the call. The galaxy followed with silent fear. Some sent fleets to shadow it, others sent spies to learn its secrets, yet none dared move too close, for the ship carried an aura that crushed courage. It was like standing before the storm, knowing it could fall at any moment, and all anyone could do was wait for its first strike or its first message. As the vessel neared the beacon, great storms of light surrounded it, twisting space like water bending, and when it emerged, it slowed and released another pulse of code, this time longer and clearer. And those who translated it with old machines finally understood the line: humanity returns not as it was, but as it must be, stronger, brighter, eternal. And with that, the ghost ship opened its outer hull like a flower, revealing inner chambers filled with glowing structures that no alien I could explain, towers of light, engines of shape beyond reason, bridges of energy, crossing air, and all of it pulsing as if alive. And the galaxy realized they were not just seeing a ship, they were seeing something that had grown into more, a seed of a civilization waiting to bloom. The part ended with the ghost ship settling into orbit around the beacon, its lights burning across the stars, while fleets far and near braced themselves for the unknown to come. And in the silence before the storm, every race knew that history was about to turn again, and that humanity, even in ghostly form, would force the galaxy to remember their power once more. The ghost ship drifted through the dark sea of stars like a silent titan, its great metal hull scarred with battles long forgotten, yet glowing faintly with energy that pulsed like the heartbeat of something alive. Alien fleets gathered from every corner of the galaxy, surrounding the human vessel with awe and fear. They had hunted humans. Once they had chased them across systems, thinking the species broken and scattered, but the return of this ship was a reminder that humanity was never truly gone, and its sudden reappearance made even the most powerful empires uneasy. The ship spoke not with words, but with action as beams of light flickered across its armor, showing strange patterns like ancient runes. The aliens tried to decipher them, but none could understand the meaning. Only the weight of it pressed upon their minds, as though the ship itself carried memories of war, fire, and vengeance deep within its bones. Some whispered that the ship carried souls of fallen humans who refused to rest until their kind was remembered. Others feared that it was a weapon so advanced that no empire could face it without being crushed under its will. On the bridge of the ship, shadows moved, figures that seemed human, yet also more than human, their faces hidden, their voices soft but strong as they guided the vessel through the crowd of alien ships. No words left their mouths, yet every mind felt the pressure of their presence. One alien commander dared to hail the ship, sending a desperate signal across the void, asking who commanded this relic and why it had returned. The response came not as a voice, but as an image of memory burned into every watching mind, showing humans standing in defiance against countless enemies, fire rising around them, ships burning in the void, yet their eyes bright with unbroken will. The image struck every alien like a blade, because they saw not just soldiers, but a species that refused to kneel, a species that carried pain like a weapon and hope like fire. The memory faded, but the fear and awe lingered. Fleets began to back away, leaving more distance around the ship, as though afraid to touch its aura. Some even lowered their weapons, unwilling to risk angering the ghosts that had returned from silence. Inside the ship, the hum of energy grew louder, corridors lit with a glow that seemed alive, metal walls breathing with light, as though the ship itself had become a living being within its core. The last captain of humanity stirred, a figure preserved through centuries by machines and memory, his body frail, yet his spirit burning strong. He whispered to the ship, and it responded, engines roaring like thunder across the void. The alien fleets trembled as the vessel shifted course toward the central worlds of the galaxy. Every empire had once claimed victory over humans. Every empire had told stories of their fall. But now, those same empires faced the truth: the humans had not been broken. They had simply waited, biding their time within the ghost ship, preparing for the day they would rise again. Fear spread faster than light across communication channels. Leaders argued, generals panicked, civilians whispered of a storm coming, a storm made of ghosts and steel. The ship entered a system that had once been a battlefield where human colonies had burned long ago, ashes still drifting around a broken planet. The aliens remembered their victory here, but now the ship hovered in silence above the ruins, as if mourning what had been lost. Then it released a wave of light, a signal so strong it reached across the galaxy in moments, carrying with it not just sound or images, but raw feelings, sorrow, hope, rage, and fire. Every living being felt it, as if humanity itself had placed its hand upon their hearts. The reaction was chaos. Some fell to their knees, overcome by the weight of emotion. Others screamed in fear, thinking the humans had returned to claim revenge. But within the message, there was no clear threat, only a promise that humanity was not done, a promise that their story would not fade into silence as long as one ember remained alive. Aliens began to gather, not to fight, but to watch. Millions of eyes turned to the ship, waiting to see what it would do next. And then the impossible happened. Smaller ships emerged from its hull, sleek silver vessels, glowing with energy unlike any technology seen before. They carried no weapons visible, yet the very sight of them filled all with dread. The ghost ship was not alone. It had been building within its silent heart, creating a fleet ready to awaken at the chosen hour. The captain raised his hand, and the fleet spread out, forming lines across the stars like a wall of light. Every alien commander watching realized the truth. They were witnessing the rebirth of human power, no longer a scattered memory, but a force reborn. The galaxy remembered the wars, the defiance, the impossible victories, and now they understood that history might repeat itself. The captain spoke at last. His voice carried through every channel into every mind. It was calm, yet heavy with command. We are humanity. We are the fire you tried to erase. We are the shadow you thought had vanished. We are the storm you cannot stop. The words echoed like thunder across space, shaking the courage of even the strongest empires. And then the ship turned once more, its engines blazing brighter than suns, preparing to move deeper into the galaxy, leaving behind silence and terror, Yet also wonder some alien voices whispered that perhaps humanity was not here to destroy, but to remind perhaps they were guardians rising from their grave to keep the galaxy from falling into endless tyranny. Others believed they were here for vengeance, and nothing would stop the fire they carried. The truth no one knew, the only certainty, was that the ghost ship had returned, and with it came the memory of a species that refused to be forgotten. As the fleet vanished into the horizon of stars, the galaxy held its breath, knowing the story of humanity was not ending, but only beginning again.